I am Tenitra Batiste, and I'm just glad I'm graced by the presence of the wise old sage, Aaron Freeman.
I'm Aaron Freeman, the wise old sage, and I just love that we get to finally talk about opportunity cost on today's episode.
I'm Jarvis Davis, and Ian Cunningham wants more picks, right?
Rise up, A-Town. It's the Falcons squad. Everything Atlanta Falcons every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the ATL. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Straight from the ATL, the Falcons Squad Show starts now.
To the Falcon Squad Show, your home for the best Atlanta Falcons football talk. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me are Locked On Falcons host Aaron Freeman and Locked On analyst Jarvis Davis. 11 Alive anchor Maria Martin will join us soon. The Squad Show is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. So 18's era in ATL has come to an end. We will download on that, and we'll talk about whether or not a certain free agent is or is not likely coming back. Also, we'll talk about the fact that there's a special teamer out there who's likely gone as well. Could he come back? We'll discuss. But first, let's talk about the tag that Aaron saw coming. So Ian Cunningham made the decision to place the franchise tag on Kyle Pitts, saying it is the, quote, right move for the organization. Again, quote, right now. So first off, Aaron, do you think using the tag on Pitts was the right move, since you kind of alluded to it on Monday Squad Show?
Right is maybe not the term I would use, T. I would probably go with it's the safe choice, as Ian Cunningham laid out. Like, they're just coming into the building. They're still trying to evaluate the roster. And as Ian Cunningham said, Kyle Pitts is one of their best players, and they're not necessarily in the business of just letting their best players walk out the building scot-free. And so what this does is give them more time to kind of figure out what they have in terms of what Kyle Pitts brings to the table. And if at a later date they decide, hey, maybe it's in our best interest to part ways with Kyle Pitts, they still have that opportunity. But at the same time, if they decide, no, we want to keep Kyle Pitts in the building for 2026 and possibly beyond, they still have that opportunity. So to me, it was the safe choice. And given the circumstances, given we joked on Monday's show that it's Drake London and who else in this pass catching core, it's like, okay, let's make sure we have at least Kyle Pitts, so there's something that we can build off in the future. So I think it's the safe move. Whether it ultimately is the right move, I think will ultimately kind of depend on if they can maximize Kyle Pitts and Drake London at the same time in this offense, something that we haven't really seen over these last 4 years.
And Jarvis, you had kind of a snarky look on your face, so I need to know why the snarky look when I asked the question of whether or not tagging Kyle Pitts was the right move.
I think it was the right move right now. I think that means something. That means something to me. And my Jarvis Spidey senses are starting to flow. It's coming through my veins. I'm starting to really feel it in my soul.
Okay.
I really feel like that Ian Cunningham was hired on January 29th.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at that unicorn that is Kyle Pitts and said, you know what? I'll put this placeholder on this $16.3 million right now. Let's see if I can manufacture some picks. I love that term. That just sounds so good for me. Good to me right now. And I think Aaron just prophesied it as well. He's talking about, if they can't come to a deal and figure this thing out. I know we're going to talk about it in a little bit, but I just feel like this is a placeholder for what could potentially happen in the future. Yeah. So that's why you saw that snarky look on my face, T, because Stefanski was mentioning, hey, we got 5 picks right now. Hey, this is the right move for right now. Like, everybody putting all these little, these end caps on these sentences that kind of, really kind of piquing my interest right now. So I think that it was the right move for right now, with the caveat.
Yes.
That doesn't guarantee you're gonna be a Falcon when in September.
Right. And that's where I agree with you as well. I wasn't a fan of or in favor of the franchise tagging, but I'm not surprised that the Falcons did decide to franchise Kyle Pitts. But as we talked about on our show Monday, there's the transitional tag, there's the exclusive tag, there's the non-exclusive tag. Well, his is a non-exclusive tag, which means he can be traded even after being tagged, which would then mean negotiating potentially like a long-term deal or whatever. For him, he's expected to earn 1 year, 16 mil for 2026, but that is if no long-term extension is reached by July 15th. So I do think with putting that non-exclusive tag on KP, it still means that the Falcons are in control of whatever his fate is, whether that means he stays ultimately or he goes, which is kind of why I can see why you had that thought free as well, where it's like, kind of a Chris Brown situation. It depends. So yeah, I think when we look at the sage that is Aaron, he mentioned it on Monday's show that he kind of thought the Falcons were going to do that. So we'll stick with you in your crystal ball predictions. Do you think that they do actually get a long-term deal done with Pitts?
No, I don't. I don't think they will. I think they will, they'll go through the rigmarole, we'll see, right? Like I think they'll get phone calls about Kyle Pitts in trades, and we'll see if one of those phone calls is good enough for them to be like, as Jarvis said, we'll give you Kyle Pitts for that premium draft pick. But I think more the long-term bet is that when we get to July and we're doing these Falcon squads in July, waiting for training camp to open, and we ain't talking about nothing, and we'll be talking about, are they going to do a long-term deal with Kyle Pitts? And it's like, probably not. They'll just probably do the dance and we'll just see, right? Because I think you have to wonder, like, do you really have to believe in your ability to get the most out of Kyle Pitts if you're going to pay a tight end that type of money?
Yeah.
And I think right now it's easy to say, yeah, we 100% believe that we can do that with Kyle Pitts.
Mm-hmm.
But, actions speak louder than words, and push is ultimately going to come to shove. And so I think ultimately Kyle Pitts, if he is an Atlanta Falcon in 2026, will be playing on the franchise tag.
Yeah. What about you, Jarvis? Do you think that with this non-exclusive franchise tag, that's any indication that the Falcons will stick with KP for the long term and give him a long-term deal, or no?
I don't know if I wouldn't do it. And I think that given this new regime that's in here, you got Ian Cunningham really trying to dig and dive and scratch and claw and trying to gather as much information as possible so he can make a decision as to what he's trying to do, which is build something, right?
Yeah.
I don't think giving a big contract to a tight end and you don't even know who your quarterback is going to be in game one. And, so when you have all these things to worry about, and there's a guy that's coming up, two guys that are coming up that have to get paid. Like you're going to pay those guys for a fact with your whole heart. Yeah, I just don't think that you have the type of money for salary cap space to allot to a tight end that only time you really saw him ball out was when he was the only guy in his first year with Matt at quarterback, and the guy who was only able to take advantage of and be productive when Drake London was out of the lineup. So that doesn't equate to a long-term deal in my eyes, and I don't think that the Falcons are going to commit that type of money to a guy like Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, and I think that when you look at, whether you look at it from the perspective of the draft, which I want to ask you guys about, or you look at it from the perspective of free agency, I think you can fill the tight end position relatively easily and still get somewhere in the range of the production that you got from Kyle Pitts, even at the height of what he was doing, if we're being honest. But then you may get that additional piece that's missing, like blocking, for example, and get yourself, I think I mentioned it on Monday's show, a little bit of what Kyle Pitts brings to the table as a pass catcher. and then a little bit of what Charlie Warner brings to the table as a blocker. And I think ultimately that's what's going to work better in a Kevin Stefanski and Tommy Rees run offense. But let's go back to this, Free, because I think you guys make a great point about some of what Ian Cunningham has alluded to in terms of stacking picks and really having that possibility of then doing what you will, whether that is stacking picks that get you back in the first round or whether it gives you some additional picks in the second or third. This could also be a chip that you use in order to do that. If he does that, let me ask you, do you first think that he's doing it so that he can potentially get a replacement elsewhere? When I say that, meaning we've talked about the needs in the trenches. We've even talked about a potential need at linebacker, which we'll talk about later. But ultimately, where do you think they're positioning themselves in using the bargaining chip that might be Kyle Pitts?
Well, yeah, I think that's really ultimately what it will boil down to. It's like, as you said, T, tight ends, we always talk about running backs being a dime a dozen, right? And it's like, that's true for most running backs, except for if you have like Bijan Robinson or Derrick Henry or Jahmyr Gibbs or whatever, where like that's the case. And tight end isn't quite like that. Like, yeah, it is true. Like if you have Gronk or Travis Kelce or whatever,
sure.
Like, yeah, those guys are different.
Yeah.
Yes. But like the issue with Kyle Pitts at this point in time, based off his 5-year body of work, is like he hasn't proven that he is. We've seen flashes of him playing at that level, but we haven't seen it consistently. And so Kyle Pitts is a lot more replaceable with that sort of third round pick, that sort of dime a dozen type player that we're talking about at the tight end position. You saw it last year in Kevin Stefanski's offense with Harold Fanning, right? You've seen it in the past with lots of, day 2 and day 3 tight ends having a lot of success in this league. And so I think you can look at a really deep tight end class, right? That certainly does not have a talent outside of maybe Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon in round 1 that approaches Kyle Pitts' ability. But as we said, like you can get quality production from a mid-level tight end like a K. Dotton, like a Harold Fanning, et cetera. And if you can secure that pick and get, a premium pick for Kyle Pitts, like you do need an offensive tackle. You do need a cornerback. You do need a wide receiver. And again, it's not going to be maybe an issue this year, but ultimately, you might be looking at a quarterback in the future. And so those premium picks go a lot further. Drafting those premium positions that are much bigger needs for the Atlanta Falcons. So if you can get a second or whatever round pick for Kyle Pitts and then invest that into a much more premium position where you're not going to be able to get away with a 4th round offensive tackle like you could with an earlier round offensive tackle, or the same thing goes with the cornerback position. Like it makes sense for you to, if you can flip Kyle Pitts for something, you can shore up another spot. And then, we'll probably take a hit at tight end, but at the end of the day, like that's not going to make or break our offense because we still have Bijan, we still have Drake London. And ultimately, like, let's be frank, wide receivers are far more valuable than tight ends are, unless you're that premier Hall of Fame caliber tight end. And basically like your mid-level wide receiver, like Darnell Mooney is a great example. Like Darnell Mooney was far more valuable to the Falcons in 2024 than Kyle Pitts was in 2025. And then you saw the drop off from Darnell Mooney in 2025. And it's not a coincidence that the offense fell off of a cliff, even though Kyle Pitts made a major step up in 2025. And so I think the Falcons have to find that right balance when it comes to investing those picks into premium positions, as opposed to essentially you can just kind of plug and play with any old tight end.
Yeah, because depending on which mock drafts you see Eli Stowers, who you might be able to get if he drops down to the 3rd round. Right now, he's looking like a 2nd round pick, or Max Clare out of Ohio State, who actually has probably the best combo of what the Falcons need if you want to get a tight end out of the draft, because he is one who catches extremely well, but also blocks extremely well. And then you've got free agency. You've got some tight ends out there that could be available, like a guy that we talked about before, whom Kevin Stefanski is very, very familiar with. He, of course, is David Njoku, but then you have a Dawson Knox, a Jonnu Smith, who, of course, is a former Falcon, if you will. I don't think Baltimore is going to give up Isaiah Likely, but just letting you know that he might be out there. But we just say that to say there are always possibilities at the tight end position, whether it's in the draft or whether it is in free agency, to get someone who could potentially be as valuable in the offense as Kyle Pitts, if not more valuable at the tight end position. So Jarvis, it kind of stands to reason that maybe they kept that chip in place with Kyle Pitts as a bargaining chip for some of the bigger needs, as Aaron mentioned, at wide receiver or even in the trenches.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you think about where this team is right now, and I feel like this is going to be a year of transition to this new regime. I think they're going to ease into it. They're not going to be aggressive and all that stuff because that's how the previous regime got themselves into trouble. So when I think looking at like tight ends who have been traded before, go back to 2022 when TJ Hockenson was traded, but before the trade deadline. Detroit got a second round pick in that upcoming draft, and they got a fourth round pick. I mean, a third round pick in that following draft. So that's valuable. Like that, those are starting type players when it comes to the top end of the draft. Like you're supposed to get guys who are starters for you, or they are heavy in the rotation. Yes. So yeah, I think that if they're able to somehow flip Kyle Pitts for something like that, they'll be able to fill as many holes as they possibly can with picks like that. Because once you get that second round pick, you can move down and attain more picks in that same draft to try to stockpile that bad boy as much as possible. That's why. Yeah. I don't know if you can tell, T, but I'm getting excited about moving back, picking up picks, getting guys, finding value. Man, that stuff is exciting for me.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that, Jarvis. It's exciting because we know that this is a deep class in the draft in multiple positions. Maybe not the QB, but the Falcons don't necessarily have that need to go and draft the QB anyway. But in all the other places that
we like at 4, I think so.
Yes, Lord. And all the other areas that we think there's a need, or we know there's a need, like up front on the defensive side, we know that there's a need there. We know also that if you're looking at the succession plan, or even the uncertainty of what Caleb McGarry you get back when you get him back, there are enough holes to fill that you should be excited about the prospect of Ian Cunningham getting more draft picks and being able to do something with him in a draft that, again, is deep in so many areas. Now, 18's era in ATL has come to an end. We'll talk, and we'll take that under further review. This episode of our Falcon Squad Show is brought to you by FanDuel. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. Now, you're going to love futures this time of year as well, because whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title, it adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now, not only can you pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on any NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And don't forget, when we wrap up the Falcon Squad Show, check out FanDuel.com to get started. So, Jarvis, this is maybe the most underwhelming thing that we've heard in the past couple of days, only because we saw it coming. Like, this was not a shock to anyone, but Ian Cunningham did confirm with the media this week that the Falcons will designate Kirk Cousins a post-June 1st release on March 11th. So let's talk about it. Kirk Cousins, his era in Atlanta is ending. How would you define it?
Almost, but not quite good enough.
It's giving Brandy.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
There were some good moments, right? Like that Thursday night game against Tampa, Cadrell Hajj, who we're going to talk about, he gone too. It was some good moments. There were some good moments, but there were also some opposite end extreme moments as well. Yes. Because I wasn't a fan of Kirk Cousins coming in here and being signed. I know that a lot of people were excited about it because, you know, he put up some good numbers. You know, he's a solid quarterback, right?
Mhm.
But I just didn't like the fact that we're sitting here talking about a guy who had his first major injury of his career, and we're thinking that he's gonna be in the first year coming off that injury.
Yes.
He's gonna come in and just ball out and everything gonna be all good. Now, granted, the first 8 games,
Mhm.
yeah, it was cool. Everything good, you know, swept the Bucks and all that stuff, you know what I'm saying? Everything looking all great. But man, when that dude got hurt, I wasn't surprised. It happens. You know, when you get old, injuries come. They're going to come, and they come in droves. Like, so I feel like, you know, his legacy here for the Falcons is going to be like, got a little bit of good, and you also got a little bit of bad. Like, it wasn't no in between. It was like,
Yeah.
super good, super bad. You know, so hey, man, at least we can say Kirk ain't mid. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And that's who Kirk, I mean, that's who Kirk is. And I
Yeah.
think what pained me, and I go back to when they signed him as well. I wasn't necessarily a fan of that signing, although I could understand why the Falcons chose to sign him, except when it was almost like I got angina again when I saw stats that when you look at what he got paid, not just here, but mostly in Atlanta, that then put him in that top 4. Matthew Stafford, $408 million over his career, but we're talking about an MVP and a Super Bowl champion.
Yep.
Next, Aaron Rodgers, $394 million, multi-MVP, Super Bowl champion. Then we talk about Tom Brady, MVP, Super Bowl champion 7 times over. So then, and let's see, his career earnings, 332. Kirk Cousins, who hasn't retired yet, so he'll probably surpass Tom Brady, 321. But a lot of that came because of that contract he signed with the Falcons. That's painful because I can't say NFC champion, right? Because you could at least say, hey, he got to the Super Bowl. Nope, can't say that. MVP, nope, can't say that. Got the Falcons out of the playoff drought. Nope, can't say that. That stat that I saw really gave me angina the way I had angina when he first got signed. But I want to bring Maria in as well, our Loving Alive anchor and 4th member of our team.
Hey.
Because, Maria, we are talking about Kirk Cousins. 18's era has ended here. And I just wanted to know from your perspective, when you look across the body of work or non-work that Kirk Cousins had here in Atlanta, what do you think defines his era?
It was short-lived. I mean, that's kind of it.
That's a good one-word answer.
It was short-lived. It was probably a waste of time and money. I mean, I don't know. You know, there's a lot of different ways to look at it, and I'm sure Kirk probably feels the same way.
Sure.
He initially, when he leaves Minnesota, I remember going back all the way to the draft, he had explicitly said he wanted to go somewhere. He was the starting quarterback. And then all of a sudden the Falcons were drafting Michael Penix Jr. And he was super angry that night, especially because he had said multiple times, hey, I want to go somewhere where I don't have any competition. Well, that's going to be, I think, even harder for Kirk now in this scenario. I think the only positive for him would be he's gone through it, whether or not he wanted that to be on his timeline or not. I think the Falcons totally botched this, and that was going to be a possibility. It was either going to be a home run or a complete miss. And as we know now, it was a complete miss. And I knew that it was trending in the direction of Kirk not being a part. I think I've said it multiple times on this podcast, you know, week in and week out. I don't think Kirk's going to be a Falcon next year. Let's be prepared for whatever that looks like. And what it looks like is there's going to be one quarterback come the new league year on March 11th in that room, because Easton Stick becomes a free agent. Kirk's getting released. And then you have Michael Penix Jr., whose leg is propped up 90% of his day. Not really, but, you know, he's coming back. And so that is something that the Falcons regime now has their hands full with, because what a mess. So I just, you know, I think it's unfortunate because we were excited to a degree to have a veteran quarterback come in here. You know, with the departure of Matt Ryan all those years ago, it's just been this tumultuous carousel of quarterbacks and who is it now? And it still feels like it, right? Like you're spinning something on a wheel. It's the same scenario. It feels like for the Falcons, there really does not feel like there's an end in sight. We all hope that it's Mike. We all hope that, we can stop spinning the wheel, but who knows? And I know that this front office certainly has no idea. They have no allegiance to Michael Penix Jr. I'm sure they think he's great prior to the injury. I'm sure they think, okay, there's some promise in this kid, but I got no clue. And so, so for Kirk, it's just short-lived. He didn't really do a whole lot. I think it's bizarre that in Kirk's time, he set a franchise record, right? Like the Tampa Bay game, you think about Kirk Cousins in Atlanta and you don't really think about a whole lot. The swag surf, certainly memorable. Yeah. But then what he did against Tampa, none of it aligns. It's all confusing, nothing really makes sense. But I would just say short-lived and probably a waste of time for everyone, including Kirk.
Yeah, but what you just called out, Maria, is typical Kirk Cousins. I mean, it's vintage Kirk Cousins, even back to his days with the then Washington Redskins, now Commanders, because he was always that up and down guy. So when he said, what is it? You like that or whatever was his phrase. It's like, we liked it when we saw it, but unfortunately we didn't have enough time seeing it to really like it or love it. And that's so what he was able to do in that Tampa Bay game, but then what he did in that 4 or 5 game stretch where he looked worse than a QB3. He looked worse than a practice squad quarterback.
Yeah, because we know now he was hurt, but still,
like
Nate Peterman, like T.
Not Nate Peterman.
Can I say one thing though? One thing, for Kirk and his future, which wasn't really the question, but Kirk is so good at TV. Like, can we talk about that? Kirk is amazing at television. I'm like, go do that. I know he wants to play and I get it. It's hard. You guys can all relate to this in some way. When you get something that ends before you're ready, it's always like this uncomfortable thing. And so for him, maybe it is the end of football. Go do television, bro. He is so good. Like, I think that he has such a bright future in television, but just his time in Atlanta just doesn't make sense.
You can't make it make sense. And you're right. Most of us have something that we love doing and we wouldn't want anybody else to tell us when it's time to not do it. And who knows? Everybody, meaning national media, the conjecture is that you can go home again. Like he can go spin the block for Minnesota because the likelihood of JJ McCarthy being a viable quarterback for the Vikings is about as likely as the Falcons figuring out their quarterback situation tomorrow. But Jarvis, you look like you want to say something. The guy
got fired.
Say what now?
That's the guy. That's how the guy with the porn stash, Adolfo. Quessy. That's how he got fired.
Has he been like this the whole show until I jumped on?
Because just get started.
It's my presence. Every time I come around, he's like, I can act a fool now. Let's go.
Because there's one more person to cover up the foolishness. So quite possibly.
Why is it always me?
The entry point.
So it
wouldn't be all on you, Aaron, to get us back on the train tracks. Should Jarvis go off the rails like he just did. But Aaron, I think when you look at the era of Kirk Cousins, we'll go with short-lived. We'll go with shaky at best. What do you define it as?
I think it's classic Kirk Cousins. Like,
that was my call to classic. Yeah.
The thing with the Falcons, and they were like, we're getting Kirk Cousins. And it's like, did y'all not watch the last 6 years of Kirk Cousins in Minnesota? Right? Like your whole goal should have been, we're not going to fall for the same thing that the Vikings fell for the last 6 years, where the Vikings were in the NFC Championship game in 2017 with Case Keenum. They got absolutely rocked by the Eagles that year. And they're like, we need a real quarterback that's going to take us over the hump. We already have a Super Bowl caliber team. And they did. They had the best defense in the NFL. They had some of the best wide receivers and weapons in the NFL. And Kirk Cousins comes in and they go like, what? They go like 8-8 or something like that. And then like they make the playoffs twice in the next 6 years. And like the Falcons were like, we're going to get Kirk Cousins and he's going to push us over the hump, just like the Vikings thought. Now, the hump for the Falcons was just making the playoffs as opposed to making the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
but it was
so
like
the threshold was lower.
And so the Falcons were like, it'll be fine. But it's like he's only been to the playoffs 3 times in 10 years. Like, you have to do more. And like, to me, I think Maria nailed it where she's like the Falcons botched this, right? Like, and again, like, we're going to talk about it. And this is going to be an unpopular take, but like, we're going to sit here and we're going to be like, oh yeah, the Falcons made a terrible decision signing Kirk Cousins. But as we've discussed, like, we understood why the Falcons, they were looking for that piece to get them over the hump. But like, I think when we look back at it, and again, it's not to sit here and call this guy a bust, but like, I think the mistake was that they drafted Michael Penix.
Yeah.
And like, when you look at, if you just sort of go back in an alternate reality and you just say, hey, Falcons, just do the normal thing in that 2024 draft and take a pass rusher, like, you butterfly away so many problems that they're now having to reconcile, where it's just like, okay, let's say they take Laiatu Latu. They don't trade away the 3rd round pick for Matthew Judon, right? And so they don't wind up trading up for James Pierce. So they have a 1st round pick this year. They probably don't have to trade up for Xavier Watts. They can just get him in round 2 like normal. And they probably have like whatever, how many 5th round picks that they had to give up in order to move around that. So you have a complete slate. You know, Kirk probably still does the Kirk thing in 2024. You're disappointed about that season, right? You probably go into 2025 and like, we're going to draft Shedeur Sanders to be our off-ramp to Kirk Cousins. That's a whole other conversation. But assuming that Kirk is the starter in 2025, you probably beat the Bucs in week 1. And, you know, who knows if you beat the Panthers in week 3, but you're probably not getting blown out 30-0. So you're probably at least 1 win better, 9-8. That gets you to the playoffs in 2025. You're coming off potentially a playoff season. You have a full slate of picks. You have an opportunity. Oh, well, if we're not worried, if we're unsure about Kirk's long-term future now, we can draft a quarterback in the 1st round now or something like that. And so, like, it's not to sit here and be like all the Falcons' problems stem from Michael Penix, but like, the Falcons, that opportunity cost, they had a chance to basically build around Kirk Cousins, maximize the 2 to 3 year window that they had with Kirk Cousins, but instead they wanted to hedge, and it wound up just kind of blowing up in their face all the while. And it's like, when you sign Kirk Cousins, if you knew what you were getting, you knew you were not getting an elite quarterback coming off the injury at his age. You were getting a mid-level quarterback that you were hoping would stabilize that position after several years of instability.
Yeah.
But of course, Kirk being as chaotic as we know Kirk is, it was still unstable. But your job as an organization was to find the stability around him. And I think the Falcons did such a poor job of that. And that's why, like, the Kirk Cousins legacy is what it is, but it's like, to me, it's less about Kirk and it's more about what this team couldn't commit. And that's why I think ultimately the old regime and Terry Fontenot, Raheem Morris is out of a job, because they were just like, we don't really know what we want. We just want something. And it's just like, we're just going to throw a bunch of stuff at the wall. And eventually one of those things are going to stick, and none of it stuck. And now they're out of a job.
Yeah, because Maria, in other cases, like an Aaron Rodgers and a Jordan Love, you could see the succession plan, or even Aaron Rodgers when he was a part of the succession plan of succeeding Brett Favre. But the way that the way that Kirk Cousins' contract was constructed, where you know for sure he'll be here for 2 years, but possibly 4 years, but you don't have the pedigree that Aaron Rodgers brings to the table, because he was still playing at a high level when they drafted Jordan Love, and Brett Favre was still solid Brett Favre when they drafted Aaron Rodgers. This is not that. This is hedging. And actually, Aaron, but I want to ask Maria the question, but going back to what Aaron said, you actually hedged your bets twice and fell short, because you hedged your bets on a mid quarterback and you hedged your bets on an off-injured quarterback. Both of those are maybe too shaky to have put all your stock into the most important position, arguably in all of football. So I think, to me, it's like a stacked, right? So you could look at the Kirk Cousins decision. That's probably what got Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris let go. But on the same token, you could look at the Michael Penix Jr. position and say, hey, if you would have gotten one of those right, because nobody's saying that you don't sign a quarterback and then get one in the draft. But if you're going to do that, it probably shouldn't look like this combo.
Yeah, and especially when you look at just the situation that they're in come April too, it makes it even more difficult. You know, it adds insult to injury. The fact they only have 5 picks, in which Ian Cunningham has said repeatedly, you know, we're never going to do this again, which, that's the goal. They're one of only 4 teams in the NFL that has 5 picks, and they trade away their 1st round draft pick to get James Pierce Jr. And we all know how that is panning out right now, but still, obviously that's an ongoing situation. And then you don't have a 5th round pick either. So it's like, there's so many different things that were trickle effects from the decisions that were made with both Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix Jr. And to be honest, we say it all the time, but we have no idea how the Michael Penix Jr. situation is going to play out. However, if we're sitting here today and we're really looking at it with both eyes open, we say this doesn't look very good. This doesn't look very promising. You know, I hope he comes back and lights it up and he's the player we all believe that Michael is and he gets the opportunity. I think all of us want that for Michael. Michael certainly wants that for himself. And I honestly think the Falcons want that because guess what? That means that at least one of those decisions, T, that you're talking about panned out for you.
Yeah.
High risk, high reward. It's a dangerous thing in the NFL, and especially at the quarterback position. I think you nailed that right on the head. And with Kirk Cousins at the time too, market indicated that was one of your only options. If you were going to go get a veteran quarterback that you wanted to be here at least for a couple of years before you could figure it out. It's such a hard position to get right. It is so hard to get right. It's even harder to create the succession plan that they have so eloquently failed at ever since Matt Ryan, the departure of Matt Ryan, and even the way that Matt was departing here from Atlanta. I mean, thank goodness they've broken bread and kind of tied up loose ends, and now he's the president of football. But the way that went down, I mean, the quarterback situation here has been tumultuous for a while. And I think until they find their quarterback of the future, which I have no idea if that's where we're sitting right now and saying Michael Penix Jr. is that. My level of confidence in that is incredibly low. I think this was worst case scenario. We said that on draft night for Michael Penix Jr. This is either going to be the best decision they ever made or the worst. And now you're out a ton of money with Kirk Cousins. The short-lived era is over. And you're staring down a situation that gets even more difficult to figure out. And it's hard for Ian Cunningham and Kevin Stefanski to stand up there and say, we got it. Quarterback is dealt with. When you got one quarterback on the roster come March 11, I think you're far from that.
Yeah. And to add to all of this, right, Terry Fontenot is probably not going to be a general manager again in the NFL because of that. Because of this situation. It's so hard to explain to hardcore NFL dudes. As a fan, oh yeah, you got the quarterback. It's been so awful, since Matt left. Oh yeah, you bring in a guy who can come in and get some wins for you now, and you bring a guy that can potentially be your quarterback for the next 10 years. Yeah, it sounds good, but to talent evaluators, guys who've been in this league general managers been in this league for 10, 12 years, no, man, that don't make no sense whatsoever, dog. You better choose ye today. And I disagree with Free just a little bit on his point that he made earlier. I wouldn't draft Leatu Latu. I would draft dog on Jared first. I don't care what nobody say. Hey, and you could have even traded back a few spots. Trade out of the top 10 and got another pick, right? And you could have just lined yourself up in such a good spot, but you chose not to. You tried to, plug a hole, with your finger instead of doggone actually fixing the joint. So, and I think that's what ultimately got Terry Fontenot fired. And unfortunately, probably not going to be able to get another opportunity to be a general manager in this league.
And real quick, all three of you kind of alluded to this as well. What also started that trickle down, and what would be a question if Terry Fontenot ever even got another GM job. And yeah, we know that maybe Arthur Blank had some overtone there, but that they botched up Matt Ryan. They botched that. So, and Terry, you were part of botching that. So you essentially botched three quarterback situations in your 5-year tenure. That's not going to bode well. That's not going to bode well either. So we forget that was already kind of sort of that nail in the coffin that did not look good. Although we know Matt wasn't great in Indianapolis. Doesn't matter. It was the fact that you botched that up and then didn't have really a game plan to figure it out. So I think, unfortunately for him, botching up one QB situation, that's one thing. But you
shout out to Marcus Mariota. Shout out.
Why does Mariota come out looking the rosiest after the last 5 years, right?
You know what? It's funny because there have been so many reports that are saying, and look at Marcus Mariota right now. He's sitting pretty. Meanwhile, the Falcons are still scratching their head like, so Des Ridder, which could also be looked at as a bot. So you got a lot of QB botchery.
T-Ho. You said could be looked at as a bust. What?
All right, come on.
I was trying to be nice,
What quarterback we talking about?
Jarvis.
Desmond Howard. We talking about Desmond Howard, or who we talking about?
Right. So we have now mentioned like 5 quarterbacks in that era, in that regime.
Oh, Taylor Heineke.
Shout out to Taylor Heineke.
Hey.
Taylor Heinicke's getting
quarterback.
married
Wow.
this year. He's going to go
So
off
he's winning on some
insurance in Virginia or something like that. He's doing good. He's doing
Yeah,
good.
he's fine.
But yeah, if you look at it in its
He was
totality,
when he played for the Falcons too.
Also, remember the quarterback documentary came to Atlanta and I was like, oh, this can't be good. Because every single time there was a documentary around the 6,000 quarterbacks we've had since Matt Ryan, something else happened to the quarterback. Like there was nothing positive that came out of those cameras being there. And that's why they loved it. They were like, all right, which 7th quarterback can we film and make it into a reality TV show? It's really wonderful television, if you ask me.
Yeah, the Falcons, the gift that keeps on giving at QB. So Ian Cunningham had thoughts on Kaden Ellis, but do those thoughts include more time in Atlanta? We'll unpack it in next up. This episode of our Falcon Squad show is brought to you by Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed, Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. So go there right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions do apply, but need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs, Indeed.com/podcast. So Maria, Ian Cunningham had this to say about one of the Falcons' biggest free agents, Kaden Ellis. Quote, "I won't get into that. I feel like for Kaden, he's a free agent. We will see how that goes moving forward. He is a guy we are obviously evaluating and thinking there are a lot of linebackers in this market. I feel like we have to really look at our cap situation and our roster moving forward." What do you think that means for Kaden Ellis?
Jarvis, what do you want to say?
Yeah, because he's looking like he's chopping at the bit now. I'm like, okay, Jarvis.
Like that.
No, Maria, go ahead.
I don't like the vibes that Jarvis is putting down. Okay, I don't like that. Tenitra was asking such a great question. She like posed it so well, and all of us. I just see Jarvis's, and I just unplugged my microphone. Or my headphones. I just see Jarvis's eyes like moving around and just scheming up something crazy, and just like I don't know what you're saying, which is probably a good thing.
I have a diabolical plan as to how this show is going to go every day. I mean, what
Jarvis is doing that. Let me tell you, Jarvis is doing that because I have really stood on the table for Kaden Ellis for an entire, I don't know, off season or a year or whatever, which is probably why he's acted a fool and like looking everywhere. But like my thing is I'm still going to stand on the table for Kaden Ellis. However, I just am starting to gain more confidence that he will also not be an Atlanta Falcon next year. And that answer kind of gave me everything I needed to know the other day. With Kyle, and I'll answer the Kaden thing more, but with Kyle, when they franchise tag him and Ian says, oh, we need more time to evaluate this player. You didn't say that with Kaden Ellis. It wasn't, I need more time to evaluate him. It's, we got to look around. There's a large desire for linebackers. There's a hot linebacker market. It's like, oh, that's not really a good sign for Kaden. And so you would probably, that's honestly, that's the comment where I thought, I don't think Kaden's going to be here anymore. Because when you're indicating that there are a lot of other options out there, that's kind of your signal that it might be time to move on from Kaden Ellis. And I know that people are going to, point to what's happening in Chicago and Tremaine Edwards and say, okay, well, Chicago and Atlanta has had not only like prior to Ian Cunningham coming here, they've had a very good relationship in terms of where players can go. And, we've had players go there within the last couple of years. Well, now you've got Ian Cunningham in the building. You have Matt Ryan's relationship with Ryan Poles. It kind of feels like something that could happen. Edwards coming here and potentially Kaden going to Chicago. Maybe that's true, but yeah, I don't have a lot of confidence Kaden's going to be here next year. I think it's unfortunate, but I think given, what the desire Kaden has for his contract and his future, it doesn't really align, I think, with what the front office is envisioning for that position.
Yeah, and like you said, Maria, we've got multiple reports in the last couple of days that Tremaine Edmonds has been given permission to seek out other opportunities. Like there's a potential that the Bears may trade him. He is in the final year of a 4-year deal, $72 million contract with Chicago. So yeah, I'm sure that eyes are on him to kind of see how that plays out. But Jarvis, for you, there were a lot of nuggets in Ian Cunningham's feedback and Ian Cunningham's response on Kaden Ellis. What did you kind of sense once you heard what Ian said about Kaden and what that means for his future in Atlanta?
I think the one that you talk about, the linebacker, the free agent linebacker market. Don't nobody want to pay their linebackers. When you look at this list, oh my God, you got guys like Quay Walker, Devin Lloyd, then go to the older guys, Bobby Wagner, Demario Davis, Kaden Ellis, Alex Anzalone, Quincy Williams. There are so many teams that are just allowing their linebackers.
Jermaine Johnson.
Y'all go see. Go test it out. See what's going on. And I think that Ian Cunningham will have his choice as to what he wants, right? Like he want to have options. And I totally understand it, because I feel like if the previous regime were here, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. They would figure out a way to get a deal done with Kaden Ellis. So right now, though, Ian Cunningham, fresh set of eyes, like, hey, man, go see what's going on out there. And then come back to me, when that first and a half wave, maybe second wave starts to come through and see. And then maybe we can have a conversation then. But as of right now, bro, you're a free agent.
Yeah.
The market is deep. It's thick out there. So we'll see.
That was the biggest indicator, was him mentioning the market to me. I mean, that's literally a telltale sign that they're thinking about departing with Kaden, for sure.
Smart and frugal. I have no issues with that.
Right. And then he starts off by saying as well, I feel like for Kaden, he's a free agent. We'll see how that goes moving forward. So to Jarvis's point, like, let's see how that goes, because that market is what it is. But also, if we're being serious, and not that it's the same position, but this front office may have a more difficult decision to make, because they may have to fill the hole for James Pierce Jr. And if I'm looking at the market and what James Pierce Jr. did in his position and what might happen if there's a hole there, versus, to you guys' point, Maria and Jarvis, what the market is bearing when it comes to the inside linebacker position, that one might not be the priority for this front office for Ian Cunningham, if we're being honest. So there may be some of the tea leaves that may lead to it, just because he's saying, hey, I got to prioritize where I go in this linebacker room, dictated by what we think or what they may know about this situation with JPJ that we don't have knowledge of or are privy to just yet. But Aaron, when you think about everything that Ian Cunningham said in that quote, Kaden, he's a free agent. We'll see how that goes going forward. We're evaluating him, but we think there are a lot of linebackers on the market. What do you think that means for Kaden Ellis?
Well, I think we've talked about it before, where Kaden Ellis' value to this team, as you just mentioned, T, goes up because of the unknown future of James Pierce and the need to rely on blitzing. But we know Jeff Ulbrich has said it. I want a 4-man pass rush. I want to build that. And so at this point, you kind of have to look at Kaden Ellis as more of a Band-Aid than a long-term solution, especially given his age. And when you're Ian Cunningham, you're like, okay, well, we have an aging player that probably has like 1 or 2 good years left. And hopefully we are going to build a type of defense that is going to minimize his value long-term. That leads to a certain price that we're willing to price you at. And Kaden Ellis is looking at it like, well, look, I've been so valuable to this football team, as Maria Martin has eloquently stated so many times over the last year, and it's like, he's like, I deserve a certain price point. And oftentimes the Falcons price point is going to be a lot lower than Kaden Ellis's price point. And so the question is going to be, can you meet in the middle and find a price point that both of you guys can work at? But if you're Ian Cunningham and the Falcons, you're like, this is the deepest linebacker draft class that we've had in like a decade. So you have an opportunity to get younger and better at that position long term and find that fixture long term, as well as there are plenty of, also temporary Band-Aid solutions that you could probably get for a cheaper price than what you need to pay Kaden Ellis. You have guys like Tremaine Edmonds that Ian Cunningham is connected to. You have guys like Quincy Williams, who had a lot of success in Jeff Ulbricht's defense over the last couple of years in New York. And so you have alternatives and pivots that you can go to that may be cheaper for this football team in the long term. And if you're Ian Cunningham, you're not going to necessarily bend over backwards for Kaden Ellis.
Mr. Freeman.
No, you have to ask the host, the teacher, when you put your hand up, if the teacher's going to call on you.
Travis, you are crazy.
Miss Batiste.
Miss Teacher.
Don't the Falcons have J.D. Bertrand? Isn't he young?
Oh, Jarvis.
I
thought you were coming with something profound.
Oh, I'm just asking a question. Sometimes you ask us questions. I want to ask you a question.
Jarvis,
sometimes.
They do have Troy Anderson coming back this year. What about that?
Ooh, back at you. Petty for petty. Analyst on analyst violence.
I would like to report a crime.
There's a lot of petty oozing from this show today. It's all over the place.
Always. Just
my
like
gosh.
We're just ready to see some 40 times. That's all it is.
Oh man. Just like the petty that we're gonna go with when we talk about how dare you Falcons let go of a Pro Bowler and a third, fourth wide receiver when you ain't got no wide receivers. We'll talk about that in the look ahead. This episode of our Falcon Squad Show is brought to you by Home Chef. As the new year gets going, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is a big one. Between busy work days, cold winter nights, packed schedules, having an easy, reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference, and that's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-proportioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. They're rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease, and it's easy to see why. Meals come ready to fit your schedule. 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays or quick lunches, and over 30 weekly options, including family-sized meals and different dietary choices. Recipes are simple but feel elevated, even restaurant quality, with dishes co-created by chefs like Gordon Ramsay. So for a limited time, Home Chef is offering my listeners 50% of your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. But you must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. So don't forget, go to homechef.com/lockedon. So, Jarvis, unfortunately, we got the news last night that one of our favorites might actually be parting ways with the Falcons as well. They're expected to release KhaDarel Hodge. Actually, according to his post on IG last night as well, he spent the last 4 seasons in Atlanta, was a really good special teams weapon for most of that time, actually went to the Pro Bowl and was a viable weapon as a wide receiver, as we saw with the game-winning catch a couple seasons back against Tampa Bay. That said, team has parted ways from him. What do you think was the ultimate reason they decided to do it?
Yeah, hopefully one day we can see him at the crossroads so he won't be lonely. But yeah, I think Aaron, why are you looking like that?
Because you went from him getting back to him going to the upper room. Like, how are we taking that?
Reference on today's episode.
But no, in all seriousness, now I'll say that because he went to HBCU. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to my dog Cadrell Hajj, man. Hey, man, I rocks with those. It's hard to get there coming from HBCU. I understand, but seriously though, I think they made this decision because we all understand all of the weirdness that was going on with the wide receiver room last year, and then you had his performance wasn't all that great on special teams, right? Whether that had something to do with all the weirdness or it was just a lack of performance, right? So, but I think ultimately when you look at it, the Falcons going to save what, $2 million against the cap? When you're trying to find money, this is the season of finding money.
Yeah.
Who's not valuable enough to keep, and where can we fill this spot with cheap labor? Oh, hey, KhaDarel, come on down. You know, that's just how this thing works. And I think that it's just unfortunate because, you know, Cadrell Hajj was a solid piece for you, especially on special teams. And he gave you that moment, one of those moments, you know, that we talked about earlier with Kirko. Hey, that was a really great moment, and Cadrell Hajj was a part of it.
Okay, can I be petty for really just a second?
Come on.
No, it's a funny comment section going back to the last section. They said Jarvis log off for mentioning JD Bertrand.
Theo Jarvis.
I asked the question. Aaron was going on about all young talent, get young and all that stuff. I was like, but people were telling me that he was He-Man, Iron Man, whatever, Marvel, whatever. Huh?
Steve Rogers.
Whatever. Yeah, people were telling me about JD Bertrand. Oh, JD, hey, you gonna be good? No, no. And I sat there and I did not agree with you. So yeah, whoever said that or whoever
Mr.
was out there trying to
said it.
Yeah, Mr. 420. You gotta be careful when you read these names because you never know.
It's true.
Mr. Puffer. I hope you weren't one of those people that were advocating for JD Bertrand to get more playing time.
Yeah. I think he was definitely joking. He was but it was just a funny comment. I'm like, oh, you want our analysts to just tap out? Okay.
Yeah.
But Maria, yes, KhaDarel Hodge, an up and down 2025 season. We remember some of the great things he did with that game winner of a touchdown, and even some great things he did on special teams to get himself a Pro Bowl nod. But ultimately, Falcons decided they wanted to move on. What do you think about their decision?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of understand. I mean, and similar to the points that Jarvis made. And again, like Ian Cunningham and Kevin Stefanski has absolutely no allegiance to anybody on this roster. And, you know, there are benefits to that. There are negatives to that. And I think it's just an overview and a fresh perspective of, all right, yeah, nice moment was great and appreciate that. And I think that's great, tip of the cap to that. But you didn't have enough to really string together to justify keeping him here. And I think it's unfortunate. You know, Red is a great dude. He's funny. Like, if you ever want to be entertained, go to his TikTok. It is the funniest thing on planet Earth. Do you guys know about KhaDarel Hodge's TikTok?
Yeah, I follow him.
Okay.
That's how I knew he got released.
So for you two, if this is the same for you as it is for me, for you two, your assignment, your homework for today is to log off and go on KhaDarel Hodge's TikTok, because he just made this video about getting released. And if you ever want to, you don't laugh at people getting released, but he always finds a way to make things funny and like make light of something. And I think that's a great personality trait. I think it's a good way to be. He's just funny. So I think you should go look at it. We're definitely going to miss him, you know, wish him all the best for sure. But yeah, I mean, it just kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah. And for you, Aaron, the decision to part ways with KhaDarel Hodge?
Well, it hurts me because I'm like an OG KhaDarel Hodge stan, because I remember back in 2022 when I tweeted that he would make the roster over Auden Tate. I got a lot of heat for that, and I'm like, Auden Tate ain't played a snap in the NFL since then, and KhaDarel Hodge been to a Pro Bowl. But you know, maybe he could have gone to 2 Pro Bowls if the Falcons had not refused to play him last year when they got rid of Ray McLeod and Darnell Mooney got hurt. And you know, they wanted to play Casey Washington and David Sills, and maybe, just maybe, you know, KhaDarel Hodge could have pulled some of that Kirktober magic like he did in 2024 and at least got a little bit more production. Again, no one's going to say KhaDarel Hodge would have had 1,000-yard season or anything like that, but I think he could have outproduced what those other guys did this past season. But yeah, we talked about it. Like, special teams is one of those positions when we were talking about our guy Craig, you know, a couple of shows ago, where like special teams is one of those positions that you're going to see a lot of turnover when a new regime comes in, because it's like the easiest place to be like, okay, well, we're just going to bring in like a whole bunch of new guys. And with Hodge not playing at the level that we had seen him play at the Pro Bowl level in 2024, the cost, like $3 million for a special teams wide receiver. Well, you need to be getting like 10, 15 special teams tackles in order to justify that cost. And especially if, you know, even though you're not allowed to play on offense according to the old regime, but, you know, if you're not bringing that value on offense, then they're going to basically look at you and like, that's very expendable. And I think that's ultimately why Cadrell Hajj got released. But certainly in my heart, there's a world where Cadrell Hajj played last year and got 40 catches and was a Pro Bowl special teams player. Again, it's a fantasy that I'm building in my world. And it's, this is how I'm going to live the rest of my life, just believing that Cadrell Hajj could have done wonderful things for the Falcons in 2025. But unfortunately, that was not the case.
You might love him even more once you watch his TikTok. I'm telling you, it is just the funniest. Like he should be
a great follow.
So funny. I can't wait for you guys to watch it.
Yeah, and you're right, Aaron. On a serious note, he and I know Jarvis said maybe he is a bit of a cap casualty, but I also think he's a raw casualty. And what I mean by that is, or a TF casualty. I refuse to say he's a Marquise casualty, but yeah, I just think that maybe the way that he was used last season was less his fault and maybe more of the coaching staff's fault, if we're being honest. But hopefully then that means he'll bounce back, and maybe he'll bounce back better in a better situation that can show the talents that got him to the Pro Bowl in the first place. Thanks to our everydayers for making the Falcon Squad Show your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked On Falcons with your host, Aaron Freeman, as your second listen. The Falcon Squad Show and Locked On Falcons are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'll see you next time.